The roar of a boxing crowd has a peculiar rhythm, a pulse that rises and falls with every exchange, every slip, every moment when momentum shifts from one fighter to another. On nights when legends are made, that rhythm becomes something almost primal, like the heartbeat of the sport itself. And for years, one man repeatedly stepped into arenas filled with doubters' opponents who were taller, heavier, longer, and younger, and turned those doubts into disbelief. That man was Manny Pacquiao, a fighter who built his legacy not by overpowering giants with brute size, but by dismantling them with speed, timing, courage, and an almost supernatural will to win. By July 20th, the narrative surrounding Pacquiao had shifted dramatically from his prime years. At 40 years old, most fighters are long retired or clinging desperately to relevance. Across the ring stood Thurman, a confident, undefeated champion in his physical prime. Thurman possessed every measurable advantage: height, reach, youth, and the swagger of a man who believed he was about to end an era. He mocked Pacquiao openly, calling him a tiny old man, promising to send him into retirement, insisting that 5 years earlier the fight would have been a mismatch. Even the scales told a story Thurman would enter fight night weighing close to 165 pounds, dwarfing Pacquiao's frame. But boxing has never been decided by measurements alone. From the opening bell, Pacquiao's movement told a different story. His feet were alive, his hands unpredictable, his angles impossible to read. Late in the first round, a sudden burst of blur of motion sent Thurman crashing to the canvas. The crowd erupted, not just in surprise, but in recognition. The old lion wasn't being replaced. The old lion was still hunting. As the rounds unfolded, Pacquiao's experience became a weapon. He read Thurman's rhythm, anticipated his counters, and punished his mistakes. A vicious body shot in the 10th round bent Thurman in agony, his face contorted in pain. By the final bell, the outcome felt inevitable. Pacquiao had become the oldest welterweight champion in history, not by surviving youth, but by defeating it convincingly. The message echoed once again: size and age were irrelevant when skill and heart were on another level. Nearly a decade earlier, in March 2010, Pacquiao faced another physically imposing challenge in Joshua Clottey. Clottey looked like a superhero carved from granite, broad shoulders, powerful arms, and a defensive shell that had frustrated elite fighters before. On paper, he was everything Pacquiao wasn't: bigger, stronger, sturdier. Yet from the opening rounds, the fight transformed into a clinic. Pacquiao attacked relentlessly, peppering Clottey's guard with combinations, darting in and out before counters could form. Clottey's defense, once considered impenetrable, began to look like a stationary target. Punch after punch slammed into arms, gloves, ribs, and head, the sheer volume overwhelming even the most disciplined guard. By the later rounds, Clottey resembled a statue, absorbing punishment rather than a contender seeking victory. Pacquiao didn't just win, he demonstrated the difference between physical strength and tactical dominance. Long before those victories, Pacquiao had already learned a painful lesson about size and experience when he first encountered Mexican legend Erik Morales in 2005. Morales possessed the reach, the ring IQ, and the composure of a seasoned champion. Their first fight ended in defeat for Pacquiao, a reminder that greatness is often forged through adversity. But what followed defined his career. In their rematch, Pacquiao returned with adjustments, sharper angles, improved timing, and relentless aggression. He overwhelmed Morales, leveling the rivalry. By the third fight, the transformation was complete. Pacquiao's speed and power reduced the once dominant champion to survival mode, his legs betraying him under sustained assault. When the stoppage finally came, it wasn't just a victory, it was evolution in real time. Proof that Pacquiao didn't just fight opponents, he adapted to them, learned from them, and ultimately surpassed them. April 2007 brought another towering opponent, Jorge Solis, who carried a noticeable height advantage. Yet from the opening exchanges, the difference in skill was unmistakable. Pacquiao controlled distance with precision, setting traps that Solis couldn't read. In the 8th round, a thunderous uppercut detonated against Solis's chin, sending him crashing to the canvas. Though he rose, the damage was irreversible. Moments later, another brutal combination ended the fight. The lesson was brutal and immediate. Reach means nothing if you can't use it effectively. Years later, undefeated and confident, Chris Algieri entered the ring 5 inches taller than Pat, believing he possessed the tools to outbox the Filipino icon. Instead, he experienced a nightmare. Pacquiao dropped him not once, not twice, but 6 times throughout the bout. Each knockdown was a reminder that technical brilliance could erase physical advantages. Algieri survived the distance, but survival was the only victory he could claim. The fight became less a contest and more a demonstration. Pacquiao Professor Algieri, as student learning harsh lessons. In 2016, another taller opponent emerged, Jesse Vargas. Vargas entered the fight visibly thrilled to share the ring with a legend, but admiration quickly gave way to frustration. Pacquiao's speed and movement neutralized Vargas's reach, turning exchanges into one-sided encounters. A knockdown punctuated the performance, and by the end, the scorecards reflected complete control. Once again, the narrative repeated itself: height alone does not win fights. But perhaps no moment in Pacquiao's career better illustrated the triumph over size than his 2008 showdown with Oscar de la Hoya. De la Hoya wasn't just bigger, he was a global superstar, a multi-division champion known as the Golden Boy. Many questioned whether Pacquiao belonged in the ring with him at all. Moving up multiple weight classes to face such a physically imposing opponent seemed reckless. From the opening round, however, the impossible began to look inevitable. Pacquiao's speed bewildered de la Hoya. His combinations landed before counters could form. Round after round, the bigger man absorbed punishment, his face swelling, his movements slowing. By the 8th round, de la Hoya's corner made the decision he could not continue. The fight ended, not with a dramatic knockout, but with a surrender to overwhelming superiority. It sent shockwaves through boxing, cementing Pacquiao as a generational talent capable of conquering divisions once thought unreachable. Another legend awaited in Shane Mosley, a fighter with a longer reach and explosive power. Yet Mosley approached the fight cautiously, almost hesitantly, as if aware of the storm he faced. Pacquiao controlled the pace, landed the cleaner shots, and even scored a knockdown. Mosley's physical advantages never materialized into meaningful offense. Once again, Pacquiao's speed and tactical awareness proved decisive. Then came one of the most brutal displays of Pacquiao's career against Antonio Margarito, a towering, relentless pressure fighter known for durability and aggression. Margarito promised a knockout, dismissing Pacquiao's size with open contempt. But when the fight began, he encountered a hurricane. Pacquiao's punches landed in rapid succession, snapping Margarito's head back, swelling his face into an almost unrecognizable mask of damage. Despite Margarito's toughness, the punishment bordered on catastrophic. By the final rounds, Pacquiao himself looked concerned, glancing at the referee as if to ask whether the fight should continue. It was domination on a historic scale, culminating in Pacquiao capturing yet another world title in another weight division. Across all these battles, a pattern emerges. Pacquiao rarely entered as the physically superior fighter. He was often the smaller man, the older man, the underestimated man. Yet, he consistently found ways to neutralize advantages that seemed insurmountable. His footwork erased reach, his angles dismantled defense, his speed shattered timing, and above all, his mentality refused to acknowledge limitations others imposed on him. The mythology of boxing often celebrates giants, the towering heavyweights, the imposing champions whose physical presence intimidates before a punch is thrown. Pacquiao rewrote that mythology. He demonstrated that greatness is not measured in inches or pounds, but in preparation, adaptability, and courage. Every time he stepped into the ring against a larger opponent, he wasn't just fighting for victory. He was challenging the assumption that size determines destiny. By the time his career reached its later chapters, Pacquiao had already secured his place among the sport's immortals. Yet nights like the Thurman fight reminded the world that legends are not relics of the past, they are living forces, capable of redefining expectations even in their final acts. Watching him overcome giants again and again felt less like sport and more like witnessing a principle in action. Skill multiplied by heart can overcome almost any physical disadvantage. And that principle resonates far beyond boxing. It speaks to anyone who has been underestimated, anyone told they were too small, too old, too inexperienced, or simply not enough. Pacquiao's career becomes a metaphor, proof that limitations often exist more in perception than reality. When preparation meets belief, when discipline meets opportunity, the impossible begins to look achievable. As the echoes of those fights linger, one question remains: does size really matter in boxing, or does mastery render it irrelevant? Pacquiao's career suggests the answer isn't simple, but it is inspiring. What do you think? Were these victories proof that skill always beats size, or were